So we'll go on to our next presentation now, and that is on the Ida Darwin site, the former Ida Darwin Hospital site. And we have Gary Goodwin from Maurice Homes. Good evening, Gary. So over to you, and please just bear in mind our time frame, will you? So if you can keep to time, please, so we have enough time for questions. Thank you.
Okay, happy to share my screen if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can everybody see my screen? Okay, my name is Gary Goodwin from Maurice Homes Limited. I'm the Group Planning and Design Director. We've been working on this project now for an awful amount of time. We first put together a sifting bid with Homes England in September of 18. We then put in a bid in accordance with their bid requirements in December 18. Our pre-app started in November of 19, and then we've had a pandemic in amongst that, and eventually submitted our planning application. It's in at the moment in December of last year. So the pre-app on its own lasted for 12 months. We're a partner with Homes England. We're pre-qualified as under their strict regime as a suitable developer for their sites. So we're invited to submit a bid for this development in accordance with the development framework and the planning consent that already existed for the site. So what I've done is this is by no means, and I'm happy to share the full design documents. It is available on the planning portal and obviously South Cam's own planning website. But if anybody wants a copy of the full design statement, there's a lot of information in there. I think it's 50 pages long. So what I've tried to do is just cut through that and just cut it down to a minimum to show you the highlights. So this site, an aerial shot of it. Those that are familiar with the site will know that this is the junior school in the corner, and these are the former Ida Darwin buildings, some of which now have been demolished. The site is to be developed in phases. So this being the pink area being the first phase, the second area phase of the development will be the yellow area, and the school is retained in the corner. Moving on. So what we've done in conjunction with Trevine Monterio of the urban design section in South Cambs and 3 different planning officers, because we've changed planning officer 3 times, is we've explored the context of Fulbourn. And so this is our contextual study, which shows us looking at the various different residential styles in Fulbourn. And also in amongst that, we've had the village design guide, which has emerged. And so Trevine has been particularly helpful in engaging with the parish council. The bid documents that we submitted with for the original site with Homes England had a very contemporary scheme, albeit within the same structure. And we discussed this with the parish council and asked them what their preference was with the emerging design guide. And the preference from South Cambs as well as planners and urban designers. And very much the preference came back for a more traditional scheme, which had references to some of the historical context of Fulbourn, and also the surrounding area and the surrounding villages, rather than something that's too contemporary modern. Although we were prepared to do either or and had prepared bids for proposals for both. So this just picks up on some of the detailing that we've got around the area, particularly because it's quite an eclectic mix in Fulbourn. We've got houses that were built in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and the historic village or the historic part of the village is quite small, but that's our contextual study of the area. Then we moved on to the structure plan that had been produced and the various different layouts. So what you can see in the top left is the approved outline master plan with the woodland retained in the middle, an area of open space through it, a community building at the end, an open space around here with the end of the site going back to that original image all laid out as public open space. So these were various iterations, and it's very difficult for me to show you the difference between them, and you might not even be able to see the difference, but take it from me, they're all radically different. But these are different workings of the scheme that we went through with the planning and the urban design departments. So what we did is we settled on a master plan here, and bearing in mind the village design guide, what we were trying to do was achieve a more informal setting. So shared surface roads, wide verges that vary in width instead of 2 metre, instead of regular 2 metre verge widths and footpath widths that are dictated by the county highways department and their regulations. So, and try and get the feeling of a village that's been developed over time. These images across the top are from some of the local developments that we've done nearby. So we've been working on RAF Alconbury. We've been developing up as far as Upton in Northampton and working with South Northampton, their design guide. And so they start to introduce some of the elements that we saw on the study of the local architecture and detailing, and they start to introduce how they might create places on the scheme. So this is our placemaking, or this is how we start to develop character areas. So we've got a character area along the bottom, which is stepped back from the main road, and that's very much detached houses, but with some, what we're calling it's a reference to the almshouses, which courtyards, which you can see more detail of. To try and break up the frontage. We've then got a character area around the woodland. We've got a character area along the railway, which also fronts our ecological buffer that we're creating. And then we've got suburban links between those. And what you can see now is how each of those character areas is picking up on various elements of the surroundings and also picking up on the local architecture. So in here, you can, some of these are actually, because there's a 40% requirement for affordable housing as well. And what we want to do is make sure the affordable housing is tenure blind. And the mix requirement is very strict as well. And there's a requirement for some apartments as affordable housing. But what we didn't want to do is blazingly obvious blocks of apartments that belong to the affordable housing. So this is an affordable housing unit. They're broken up into small units. So this is just 3, 6, 9 units. But it's designed to look like a fairly large house, and it actually forms a focal point within one of the characters areas. This is actually 4 one-bedroom maisonettes in this area here, and it's designed to look like some of the workers' cottages that are associated with the pump station in Cherry Hinton. So it has those reference to the local surroundings. So here again, you can we've just zoomed in on some of the site frontage here where we've got the almshouses courtyard. And again, we're just picking out some of those local details and showing you how those have been incorporated into the street scenes. So moving on. So this is our final layout. This is what we've submitted for. So you can see the green open space, you can see the ecology corridor, and you can see this large area of open space here and the community building that we have in here. The woodland itself is going to have some sustainable urban drainage systems in, and we've got some more drainage systems here. So this again just shows you some of the placemaking that we've got. So just zooming in on some of those apartments, those affordable apartments there, and how they will look and where they've drawn their references from again.
Gary,
this is the frontage. Yes.
Sorry, just to give you a heads up on time, if you could be thinking of drawing the presentation to a close, just so you've got time to take questions.
Yeah, fine. Yeah.
Thanks.
So this is the almshouses we talked about, and this area is the community centre. And this is a typical community centre that we've designed up recently in Fenstanton. It's not the finished design. There's a process for that, which has to be done after we get reserve matters, which I can go into if anybody's got any questions about that. But it's a case of offering the land, then designing up proposals in conjunction with the parish council. So just to talk about the landscape proposals. So we're creating a linear public open space along the edge of the site here. we've got public open space going all the way through the development, and we've got some interesting woodland features for the children to enjoy. And we've got community assets, such as a community orchard next to the community centre. I've got a picture of the windmill there because I know the windmill is particularly important. I'll skip past the community centre because we've already spoken about that. So having studied the long views of the windmill, there were two areas that we could see the windmill from, very obvious areas. One was right down at the bottom of the site here, which I'll zoom in a little bit. Was right down at the bottom here where there's a gap in the hedge and it's just a natural view to that, and that's right by the existing school. The other one, because the site rises slowly from the east and over to the west, so the levels here are quite a bit higher. So what we've done is we've created a journey which takes in the windmill views. So this is the start of our linear walk along the front of the site. There's a viewing platform in there. There's a seating area. And as you go through the linear open space and all the existing trees, you make your way into the larger open space. And then we're building a large raised platform here, which will incorporate some information boards, perhaps some viewing arrows, show you what you can see in the distance. And that's the journey of the windmill views. And we feel quite strongly that you know, our landscape architects, Barnes Walker, have done a fantastic job of incorporating that. So I'll just quickly go back because I skipped over it. This is the community building.
Sorry, Gary, can I ask you to draw it to a close? So
yes, that was the last slide. So the community building, it's very much generic at the moment. It's designed to mirror an apartment building next to it, and it creates this place in the middle of the scheme. And it sits on the edge of the open space there as a focal point for the whole development. So that sort of draws a close. That's to the presentation. As I said, it's a very, very elaborate document. It's 50 odd pages long. Hopefully that gives you an overview of what we've done so far. So happy to take questions.
Thank you. Thank you. So questions. I think we have several questions in the...
Yes, Chair. Would you like me to read the first one out?
Yes, please, Chris. Thank you.
So the first question is the team aware that proposals have been made to open a new railway station for Fulbourn, and that these proposals do not necessarily mean opening the old site? Opening a station in the Ida area is one of the more sensible options, especially given the housing there.
The railway or the proposed station, I'm not aware of the proposed station, I'll be honest. It's not, I don't see that it affects the proposals. We've allowed a noise buffer against, because we've got a noise report for the adjacent railway along the northern boundary of the site. And so I'm not aware that and certainly there's nothing in the in any of the documentation so far that we've had to work to, or the parameters plan or the outline planning permission that would affect the development. The development's turned out so that it looks out over the railway, and that protects the rear gardens from any noise that's generated by the railway, and keeps the noise levels down for those, so people have their own private amenities area.
Thanks, Gary. The second question, which has just moved up my screen, bear with me, is does affordable housing include social housing, i.e. council housing? And if so, what proportion of affordable housing is social housing?
Yes, there's 40% of the homes on the development are affordable housing. I'm not sure of the exact split between rent and shared ownership, but it's predominantly social rent housing. We've already got several partners that we've already worked with, which are local housing associations, and it will be one of those. There's a vetting process that we have to go through in the Section 106 agreement, and it has to be one of the preferred housing associations of the parish, of the local council, South Cambs.
Thank you. Can you explain what tenure blind means, and is any housing for retired or the older community?
So tenure blind basically means that you should not be able to distinguish in any way, shape or form what's a private house and what is an affordable house. So we don't consider ourselves a normal developer. We banned barge boards and fascias and low ceilings a long time ago. And instead we use crafted details and brickies, because those were post-war economies that were introduced to try and make housing or building housing cheaper. So we make sure that all the detail that we include on our private houses is exactly the same as it is for our affordable housing. We also make sure that the affordable housing is pepper potted around the scheme rather than all concentrated in one position. So that means that it will be very, very hard for somebody to walk on the development and say, there's the affordable housing and there's the private housing. In fact, we've got 5-bedroom detached houses next door to some of the 1-bedroom social rented houses. So it's very much about integrating the social housing with the private housing.
Thank you. And then we have a couple of questions related to sustainability and design. Firstly, any electric car charging points? And secondly, how did you arrive at building heights and the use of roof spaces, and will solar panels be fitted by default?
Okay. So there is so yes, there will be car charging points for every single property. That's just something we're doing as standard. In addition to that, we're required through the planning conditions on the outline to have an eco show house, which will have a number of additional extras that people can purchase if they wanted. It could be, and the things could be extra PV on the property, extra solar panels on the property. It could be water harvesting systems. But there's a strong likelihood, and it's more than likely, that part of this site will be built to the new Part L building regulations anyway. That in itself requires a 31% improvement in carbon reductions. And that's coming into effect in June of next year. So by the time we actually start building on this site, we will be building to that requirement. In addition to that, there's also there's a planning condition that says that we have to provide 10% of all the energy via renewable energy sources, which means an array of solar cells on most of the developments, most of the houses on throughout the developments.
Thank you. Just to go back on the question about older persons housing, is there any older persons accommodation in the scheme?
I can't remember it, to be honest. If there is, there's a few bungalows on the scheme required by the Section 106 agreement in the for the mix of affordable housing. The mix of affordable housing is already dictated, so it's a set number of 4 beds, 3 beds, 2 beds, and 1 beds. And I would also imagine some of the 1-bedroom ground floor maisonettes would also be suitable for elderly, because they're to the M42 disabled access standards. So there is an element there for them, but I can't specifically remember if we have to provide some bungalows on this site as well.